I think by now my disinterest with the roguelike genre is fairly well documented on this channel. However, once in a while one comes along that gets my attention and I find fun to put in more than just a couple hours. Welcome everyone, StealthyShiroean here, and today I'm bringing you my review of Godless. Godless is a roguelite auto-battler with some tactical turn-based gameplay added to the mix. It's solo developed and published by Dyalla, apologies if I butchered the name, and was released in June 2024. Now, without further ado, let's get to the review. Starting off with the presentation, well, at a glance, the visuals are fine. The 3D models for the different units are varied and well designed, even if many of them feel uninspired. The board the units rest on are also clear and deliver appropriate visual information that can easily be gained just by glancing at a specific tile. I think where this game excels is with the UI design. The game has a lot of different variables that affect a battle and presents a lot of information in a sleek and clean UI presentation. Furthermore, many UI elements all have tooltips, and further tooltips within tooltips if a certain term needs to be explained. With the complexity this game can bring, it's nice that all of this information is found easily and not a cluttered mess behind a bunch of menus. In Godless, you play as an all-powerful deity bent on revenge. Humanity has turned against the gods and killed all of them except for you. So now you have to put these pesky humans in their place by subjugating each continent of the world. Honestly, the premise to me is a fun concept, so I was a little disappointed it wasn't explored further. There is some flavor text for each continent and with some of the choices that you make, but it's more set dressing for the world itself than actually telling any sort of cohesive narrative. However, I'd imagine the narrative aspects falter a bit because of the emphasis placed on gameplay. A typical run involves the player traveling to a series of continents. These continents are the battle map you're playing on for that particular fight. Fights take place in a series of 3 waves, with each wave getting progressively more difficult. Players have a limited mana pool that replenishes 1 each turn. The mana pool is what allows them to play units, spells, or modify tiles depending on their chosen skills. After clearing a fight, the player gets rewards they can use to modify their loadouts, or various in-game currencies to purchase things in a couple exploratory nodes in between fights, as is typical of the genre. Every 3 continents is a boss fight, with the final boss fight capping it off on the 10th continent. What Godless has in spades to its benefit, and also its detriment, is a plethora of different options and variables that all come into play in a fight. There's many different ways to improve your build throughout a run, and various number of things that can hinder your run as well. Things like shrine bonuses, various talents, ascension bonuses for the type of god you play, natural disasters, and forgeable gems used to slot on skills. And that's not everything. It's a dizzying amount of choice and can sort of get confusing as to how things will all play out in a fight, or what to decide to pick when you're moving between fights. Although, once I played a few matches, I concentrated solely on a couple things, and largely ignored the rest. Which makes me wonder if the other options are that viable or necessary. I largely concentrated on shrine upgrades and talents when I moved through the 2 nodes you get between fights. The shop I only ever visited if I needed something to round out my starting hand of skills, and the forge I never visited more than a few times in my whole time playing the game, unless I had to, which most of the time I never had the material to forge gems anyway. Because I always made those choices, I saved my currency, or ether as it's called, to fund those preferred upgrades, and any leftover was used to change some rather nasty enemy bonuses or natural disasters. The shrine upgrades in particular felt really powerful when you'd get the shrine type specific upgrades, which I almost always did when I chose to visit that node. I don't really see why I'd need to choose much of anything else, but keep in mind that I never played past normal difficulty. So maybe there's a case for a bit more nuance at the harder difficulty levels. The easier levels allow casuals like me to play the game and create simple synergies, whereas a higher difficulty probably requires better knowledge of how these systems work together and what is available in each of these various upgrade options. All that said, I think Godless has an excellent blend of ideas. I particularly like the board game aspects the developer brings to the table. The hex grid is a nice touch, and I like the many different tile types to consider. While not being able to move your own pieces on the board is a bit unconventional, I like the puzzle-like strategy it provided. The game lets you see where each unit will go, and you have some level of control of that through the tile changes you can make as well as spells that could affect movement. Summoning your units into hexes can also influence movement of the surrounding units. As a board game enthusiast myself, I really enjoy this aspect of the game. And, as is the case with this genre, finding synergies that work well is also enjoyable. Finding the right stuff that could work together with what you've been randomly given at the start is great. I particularly like setting up the Magma Shrine as a one-man army, or the one run I had where I had a cheap unit that would do AoE damage every time I used any sort of magic, being a scroll, spell, or auxiliary skill. And being able to destroy a boss on the very first turn, that is super satisfying. And that brings us to the value and my final thoughts. But first, if you're enjoying the review or found it helpful, then please consider giving it a like, as that helps me out greatly with the YouTube algorithm gods. I put about 11 hours into the game, and it runs for $9.99 USD. I think fans of this style of game will find lots of value here. There's a good bit of unlockable passive buffs as well as several different shrine types to play as. Furthermore, the game has several difficulties to test the more dedicated players. And to top it all off, the developer is still providing updates to the game with a roadmap of future editions rolling out over the next few months. The game's attempt to try something different is commendable, and I think for the most part it works well. There may be some confusion because of the sheer amount of choices, but as players get acquainted with the game after a few runs, some of that will pass as they start developing their own strategies. If you played the game, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't, then let me know if it sounds like something you'd be interested in, or if you have any other questions. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.